What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Sunday edition of The Awakening World. I'm your host, Love Coach Scott Catamas, and I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome all of our friends that are in our Zoom room. I see a lot of familiar faces. There's Eleanor and Melissa and Phyllis and many of our friends. I also want to welcome all of you who are watching on Facebook or YouTube. A big thanks to John and Summer Raymer. Through the Sign Network, that's S-I-N-E, they get us out to 100 Facebook groups and pages. And it's really, really wonderful, all the new friends that we meet that way. So thank you very much. Now, if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, come on into the Zoom room. We're going to have a very interactive show today. And it's all about our spiritual influences. As part of the awakening world, in order to wake up, we have those luminaries that light the way for us. And we're going to hear about who some of our favorite luminaries, who their spiritual teachers have been. We're going to hear from Reverend Michael Beckwith. We're going to hear from Reverend Temple Hayes. And joining us live on his birthday, no less, is my good friend, Jonathan Robinson. You've seen him on the show before, best-selling author of multiple books. And Jonathan is sharing part of his birthday with us today. Welcome, Jonathan.
Good to be here, Scott.
He has an amazing podcast where he's been interviewing many of the top spiritual teachers, luminaries. And so we're going to learn all about that and a little bit about those influences. But we always like to invite people to join us. And it's really easy to do that. If you are watching on Facebook or on YouTube, come on into the Zoom room, and you do that by going to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com. And whichever page you might land on, it's, got one of those little carousel dealies. Wherever you land, you're going to see right down here where you can say register, and you register for the new season. We do 3 shows every weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. Every show is unique and quite amazing. On Friday night, it was all about envisioning and experiencing ascension with some of the leading ascension teachers. Last night, we had a great time. We collaborated with Humanities team, founded by Neil Donald Walsh, and had their whole core group with us, as well as amazing music with Omashar and Sean Galloway and Mystical Joyride. And then here's today's show, honoring our master teachers, with a special focus on Paramahansa Yogananda, which we'll talk about that a little bit later today. So definitely register, join, and you definitely want to join now, because next weekend is our Global Peace Tribe retreat, our very first one in Sedona, Arizona. And we're going to live stream almost all of the retreat out to you. So for those who have registered, you're going to get the live stream all day Friday, most of Saturday. Saturday night, Daniel Brinkley is confirmed as our keynote speaker for Saturday night. Then the Sunday and Monday, 4 days of retreat with a dozen different teachers leading play shops all next weekend. And you're going to get all of that as long as you've registered. Now, all the people in our Zoom room, they've already done that. So it's a very, very exciting time to be a part of the Global Peace Tribe. And on Sundays, we always like to start by slowing down, which I'll try and do in a moment, by leading a meditation. And then we're going to hear from beautiful, beloved brother Omashar with some music. And then we'll get right going with Jonathan, Reverend Michael, and Temple Hayes. But let's now, let's slow down. I want to invite everybody, whether you're listening to this live or for those of you watching the replay, welcome, and let's close our eyes, unless you're operating a motor vehicle. And let's start with our breath. And I invite you to start breathing consciously. So your attention is on your breath, allowing my voice to just gently guide you. Slowing down. And with each breath, you're going more and more inside yourself, leaving the external world, whatever was going on in your outer world, and coming more and more into the beautiful universe of you. Tuning into your beautiful body temple. And what's going on with your body temple? How are you feeling? Are there any places in the body that maybe there's a little discomfort, could use some extra love? If so, send loving connection to those places. How well resourced are you? That's a wonderful question to ask each other. How well resourced, meaning have you had enough food, water, rest? Are you feeling energetic or tired, relaxed, anxious? What are some of the states that you carry with your body? Some people live in a permanent state of hypervigilance, and we need to be very compassionate for those people that have that daily challenge. Some people live with kind of consistent low-grade anxiety or stress. Or some people are just in a stressful time in their life. And if that's true for you, we really offer loving compassion, and may this show and the Global Peace Tribe be a source of support for you. And we also acknowledge that for some of you, it's a good time, and we celebrate with you. We celebrate that it's a joyful time or a happy time in your life. Whatever you might be feeling, whatever emotions might be going on for you, they are all welcome. All emotions are welcome here. There's no bad feelings or negative emotions, but there are some that are uncomfortable, and we acknowledge that. And continuing to breathe. The final question is, who have been your spiritual influences? Who have been your master teachers? Would love for you to share that with us. You can put it in the chat box if you're in the Zoom room. We want to know. And we honor all those luminaries, those beings who have lit the way for us, who have uplifted us and provided us with wisdom, hope, and inspiration. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
when there's nowhere left to turn. And you're feeling kind of low. Slow down, and breathe me in. When the smile has left your face, and the tears roll down your cheeks, slow down, and breathe me in. When your river's running dry, and you're driven to your knees, slow down, and breathe me in. I am watching you, waiting for you to let my love into that lonely life of yours. Listen to me, and we can be together free eternally. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La la la. La 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 la. When you're feeling out of touch, and you need someone to hold, slow down, and breathe me in. And breathe, slow down, and breathe me in.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's always a good one. That has a it has a great story behind it, because I used to live on Greg Braden's property in New Mexico, and we were land mates. It was his property, and it's at about 8,000 feet, and there was hundreds of thousands of acres of just sagebush grass. It's just so empty. There's nothing there, and I was feeling so empty in this emptiness. And this song just came to me, and it said, just breathe me in. You're feeling lonely. You're not feeling lonely. You're just feeling my vastness. Breathe me in, and I shall replenish you. And so that's where this song came from. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Omashar. And I always want to remind people that we can support Omashar by buying his music. The best place to get it is Bandcamp, although you can get it on all the other regular places, but if you go to Omashar, his name, omashar.bandcamp.com, boom, that's where you'll find it. And it's just a blessing to have you every show, kind of knowing that you're there. Now I know how Johnny Carson felt about oh, now I'm forgetting the name of his sidekick. But
Johnny Carson's sidekick, that'll do.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Anyway, somebody help me out here.
Ed McMahon.
Ed McMahon, thank you. That was it. And that's perfect because that was Jonathan Robinson, one of my best friends, coming to my rescue. So a perfect segue. And let me tell you about Jonathan. He's not only one of my best friends, but he is the best-selling author of 14 books. He's reached over 200 million people. His books have been translated into 47 languages. He's made numerous appearances on the Oprah show, as well as many other national TV shows. And he is all about finding happiness. In fact, that's his website, is findinghappiness.com. So welcome, Jonathan. It's good to have you with us today.
Now I have to tell everybody I'm just a regular guy who got into this because I was very depressed and looked for the easiest ways to feel better. So that's basically what I've done.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about your work, actually, because you are actually a very regular guy. But you're really dedicated to finding happiness and joy. One of his books is 101 Tips for Joy. And when I go to visit Jonathan, and which I do frequently, he's got all these toys. He's got all these wonderful things in his house, wonderful ways to play and have fun. But you're also really good at sharing with people tips and tools for calming down, dealing with stress. But today, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but of course, I also really am eager for you to share with us a little bit about your spiritual journey and your influences, because that's what today's show is all about. So let's go back when you were not so happy. Was there any particular or maybe multiple teachers, influences that kind of got you on the path, got you on track?
Actually, the first one was my uncle, who was a hypnotist, and I was like suicidally depressed, and he hypnotized my sister to think that she was Mick Jagger, and she started singing "I Can't Get No Satisfaction," and she was shy. So I said, "Wow, if you can change someone's identity in 5 minutes, I want some of that. I'd like to be anybody other than me at this moment." And so I saw that you could really change how you feel in your identity pretty quickly if you had the right method.
That is a really cool story. Well, thank you, Uncle Robinson. And other influences, like who was next? Who's next in your history here?
Well, you could say my next influence was the ability and asking for help. That really is the key. It doesn't really matter who your guru or teacher is if you're not good at taking in help. And I got pretty good at taking in help from books, friends, and then later I lived with a guru for over 20 years. Currently, I follow a guy named Dr. Jeffrey Martin, who's a Harvard psychologist who studied 1,200 enlightened people and found out what were the best 10 methods that led to awakening. And so I learned all those methods and found that they work really well. So, always finding someone who can inspire you, whether it be a book, a person, or a course. So one of the things I did when I was like 15 was I took 10% of my income and decided I would invest it in myself. And I've done that for the last 50 years now. And that's a lot of money over time, so I went from being somebody who was shy and depressed to somebody who's having a great time in life. But a lot of it was just investing in every course, workshop, guru I could find. And that, I think, really has paid off over time.
This is some really beautiful tips, so I just really want to anchor that in. Invest in yourself and be willing to learn, be willing to grow. And I think the majority of people watching our show can relate to both of those things. But especially, maybe investing in yourself is really, really a beautiful one. And I love that 10%, like that is a significant amount, that is significant.
And whatever whatever I haven't used for a year, I send to a charity. So, sometimes that's several $1,000s. But, if you invest in yourself 10% of your time, investing in yourself 10% of your money, that investment really pays off over time. I think, people invest in the stock market or other things, but no investment is greater than the one that you make in yourself, because wherever you go, there you are.
That is really, really good advice. Beautiful advice. I want to read, Jonathan, a few of the comments coming in, and I really appreciate that our friends in the Zoom room are right away beginning to share about some of their spiritual influences. Eleanor writes, Eleanor Joy, who, by the way, we loved watching you dance last night, Eleanor Joy. You just really were rocking it. The combination of Mystic Joyride, their amazing music, and you dancing was really one of the great moments from last night. She writes, life itself, family and friends, functional and dysfunctional. That's good. Let's honor those dysfunctional family members. Most of the well-known teachers and leaders out there, the Global Peace Tribe, and all of our guests, and your own superconscious self. I'm going to put her on for a moment. Good job, Eleanor Joy. Thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that. That's good. And then I'll bring Jonathan back on too. Susan writes, or actually Jeffrey wrote next, I delight in simple joys. Good one. Susan writes, Ram Dass, Louise Hayes, Wayne Dyer, Matt Kahn, Meg Benedicte, Reverend Michael Beckwith, Neil Donald Walsh, Monsieur Anam, The Stargate Experience, Cryon, Reverend Temple Hayes is at Unity Church where I live in Santa Barbara, where you're going to hear from Temple in just a few minutes. Phyllis writes, Thich Nhat Hanh. Melissa, in response to what Jonathan said, asking for help has transformed me. Omashar writes, asking for help is a skill I have yet to master. That's honest and vulnerable. Jeffrey, Science of Mind, daily readings and daily word from Unity. Susan, I also meant to add Deepak Chopra. We don't want to forget Deepak. And Jonathan putting in something I certainly relate to, his dog Sophie, but only Sophie?
Well, you have to have just one guru that you really focus on, though my dog Bailey is also an inspiration for sure.
Okay, I mean, I want to put a little pitch there for Bailey. Yeah. So Jonathan, tell us about, you've got this incredible podcast you've been doing. And I'd love to hear, again, kind of a little bit, let our audience know about it, and also where people can find it. And then what have you noticed some of the influences have been on the teachers that you've had?
Mm-hmm. Well, the podcast is called Awareness Explorers, where we mostly interview spiritual teachers such as Byron Katie, Deepak Chopra, Adyashanti, people like that. And, one of the things I do is I always ask them what method or idea really made the difference in your life. And it's interesting to hear what these spiritual luminaries say. Often it's something very simple. So I think our mission, should we decide to accept it, is to find the key idea or method that really makes a difference in your life. Like for me, it was tithing 10% to my investing in myself and 10% of my time. But something that I got from Adyashanti, which I really liked, was the idea of allowing everything to be as it is. We're normally resisting something, so just allowing everything to be as it is, including my resistance to what is, So it might be that in a moment I'm disliking myself and I think, I shouldn't do that. Well, I'm going to allow myself to not like myself in this moment. I allow myself to get down on myself for not liking myself. And as you just change that energy from resisting yourself or reality to allowing it and even welcoming it, it changes how you feel, and it gives you a lot more peace. So that's a simple example. But we have now over 100 episodes, and it's the third most popular spiritual podcast in the world right now. So I think that happened just because we follow our curiosity. What does lead to peace in this crazy friggin' world we now live in? And some people have found it, and what can we learn from them?
Beautiful. It's beautiful work. And how do people find it?
awarenessexplorers.com or any podcast app. Also, something that's on there for free at awarenessexplorers.com. I always ask these spiritual teachers for their best 10-minute guided meditation. So you get the best 10-minute guided meditations from the best teachers in the world, and it's all for free. So feel free to check that out as well.
All right. Well, I'm going to that website right now. So for those of you watching on Facebook, it's awarenessexplorers.com. I've also put the link into the Zoom room, and there it is. And look at all these amazing, God, you guys are everywhere. And let's take a look at who some of the guest explorers have been. Let's click there. Oh my God, holy moly. Remarkable. And so many of these people I have tremendous respect for. Byron Katie, there she is. Wow. And you say you've done 75 of these now?
About 110, I think.
Wow.
We're interviewing Marianne Williamson tomorrow. Thanks to you. You made that connection, Scott.
My pleasure. Say hello to Marianne for me. Oh, remind me, actually, I have a message for her, which I'll tell you about off camera.
Okay.
I do have an important message for her. So, wow. Well, good job. And, while we're kind of on Jonathan, I also want to just, kind of make sure that all of you know more about where you can get more Jonathan Robinson. And again, I put this into, whoops, wrong one. I put this into the chat box, but for those of you watching on Facebook, again, it's his website, findinghappiness.com. I love that. There's little Jonathan. Hey, it's one of those things where if you put in your name and give him your email address, he is really good about sending out bonuses every month. He sends out an email with like fun videos, fun tips, fun practices. So really want to invite and encourage everybody to do that. And also want to remind you that he's got great books. And the book that I especially recommend, if you go to his website again, then click on books. Of course, More Love, Less Conflict. I can relate to that. But there it is, The Technology of Joy. 101 best apps, gadgets, tools, and supplements, even supplements for feeling more delight in your life. So definitely go visit findinghappiness.com and get some of his books. Now, Jonathan, it's your birthday. And one of the things that I always love to do with a good friend who has a birthday is ask, what is your vision for the next cycle around the sun? You're starting a new cycle around the sun today. What's your vision for the next 12 months? And all of our Global Peace Tribe, we're going to hold that vision for you right now. What's your vision?
Well, two. One is to have a lot of fun, because if you're having fun in life, a lot of other things work out. If you're enjoying life and having fun, then your problems don't get too big. Your relationships tend to be good. So that's one thing. But the other thing is to contribute to more people in terms of shaking us out of our complacency and into a sense of urgency that we need to work on our consciousness and work on these simple ways to tap into peace. As you know, I try and do that, but I think in this next year, hopefully, I have a new book out, The Enlightenment Project, and I talk about like the greatest hits of what I've learned from 100 teachers. So, getting that out and hoping that people actually use the stuff, because I think the technology for finding peace has gone a lot better in the last 3 years. And if people know about some of these methods, that they'll really get to a new place. And it's worked for me, so hopefully it'll work for others.
You know, the moment you mentioned it, I went to my nightstand because it's right by my nightstand. I've been reading this along with a book by Dr. Kenneth Ring, but it's a fabulous book, and it is his newest book, The Enlightenment Project, which I'll try and get it just right.
I like how it's going in and out of this reality. You know, it's
Exactly. It's a great book. It's a great book. So congratulations. Eleanor Joy is asking, what is your most fun activity, Jonathan?
You know, my most fun activity now is waking up with both dogs on one shoulder while I kiss them and I tell them how much I love them. You know, that's a great way to wake up. And I think that we all have little things that we do that are fun, and then we have a little voice in our head that says, "Oh, I need to get productive and go on with my day." Well, I eliminated that voice. So now when I'm having a good time, I just stay with it. So I start with like 5 minutes of devotion of kissing and loving my dogs every day. And that brings me a lot of joy and happiness.
Well, I need to, I mean, I wake up with the dog, one single dog. But my voice of time to get to work, I have not learned how to quiet that voice. I must confess. But that's also how I get 3 shows done every weekend. So, all right, we are going to listen to Reverend Michael Beckwith. This is a pre-record that I did with him because, of course, on Sundays he is leading 3 services for Agape. And I know some of the people watching have already listened to one of his services today. But this is a pretty cool pre-record. We're going to learn all about his spiritual influences, including Michael Beckwith when he was much younger and having an LSD trip. So this is a pretty interesting pre-record video that we have here. And I'm eager to hear your thoughts, Jonathan, after we listen to it. And of course, any impact and thoughts that come in from our audience. So here we go. Let's hear from beautiful, beloved Reverend Michael Beckwith. And oh, it's taking a minute to open. Oh, give me a moment. I thought it was open because it appeared to be open. It's getting there. It's about halfway through, everybody. And while we're waiting, just a reminder that Michael Beckwith is the creator of the Agape Spiritual Center, which has become one of the most popular churches. I first started going to his church 30 years ago when we were meeting in the basement of the Santa Monica Miramar Hotel. Anyway, here we go with Reverend Michael. Michael, thank you so much. Happy Holy Days. And we would love to know some of your spiritual inspirations, teachers, how they influenced you, and maybe how you apply that to your life.
Scott, first of all, thank you for having me with you once again on this wonderful, what do we call it? Saturday Alive?
Saturday Night Alive.
Saturday Night Alive. Thank you. It's always a joy to be with you. It's always a joy to embrace the individuals who are embracing us at this particular moment with whatever the conversation has been. And the conversation has always been uplifting, inspiring, healing, and transforming to the best of our abilities. So when I think about my influences, the first one that comes to my awareness is probably the greatest mystic to come out of America, and that is a man by the name of Walter Russell. And Walter Russell went into a state of cosmic consciousness and wrote the Divine Iliad, all those volumes without any editing from a very expanded state of consciousness. He wrote The Secret of Light. He predicted the elements in the periodical table way before scientists even knew they existed. He invented the duplex. He was a championship ice skater at age 69. He was a mystic. He did a lot, but for me, when I had my spiritual awakening, I didn't have any teachers. I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought I was suffering from some kind of pathology. I was a senior at USC, and so the things that were happening to me at the time, I didn't have any roadmap about it until I began to, for some reason, I don't know how I got hooked up with Walter Russell, but as I began to study him and saw some of the similarities between what had happened to him and what was happening to me, it let me know that I was sane. So that my immersion into the light, as I read him, and he talked about going into cosmic light, I realized that I was not alone on this particular path. And so as I studied him, it was my first foray into the understanding of what mysticism was, the understanding of the universal cosmic laws, and so it deeply imprinted me in a very powerful way. So that was my first movement into that kind of understanding. In the beginning of my walk, over 40 years ago, before I even walked into any kind of metaphysical spiritual community, he was my guy. So I used to always say, most of my friends at that particular time in my life were dead people. They were all people on the other side that were giving me clues and spiritual breadcrumbs to the understanding of what was happening to me. So there was a little small book that introduced me to him. It was called The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. It was by Glenn Clark. It was about Walter Russell. And then that led me to reading another small little book called The Man Who Talked with Flowers. And that was about the great mystic known as George Washington Carver. And most people thought that George Washington Carver was a scientist, or that they understood him from the efficacy of the peanut and things of that. But that didn't even cover who George Washington Carver was. And so that led me to understand that George Washington Carver was a full-blown mystic who would go out at 4 o'clock in the morning and ask Mother Nature and ask the presence of God the usefulness of particular plants or the soil or the earth. And the plants would reveal to him their efficacy and their secrets. And then he would go into his laboratory and prove what he had gleaned through his mystical connection to Mother Nature. Most people thought that he was using the old scientific method of going into the laboratory and doing experiments, trial and error and that type of thing. But he never did that. He got the answer first through his mystical connection, then he would go prove it. And most of the great ministers that were coming out at that particular time, he was their teacher. But they had to meet with him at night because he was a Black man, and it was forbidden for a Black man to teach white men anything. So it was all done, cloak and dagger, it was all done, behind the scenes. So they could never say that their teacher was George Washington Carver. So George Washington Carver would say things like, if you fall in love with something deep enough, it will reveal its secrets to you. So he would fall in love with the peanut. He would fall in love with the soil, and it would give him the colors to paint with. He would fall in love with the trees. He would fall in love with Mother Nature, and they would reveal their secrets to him. So he got up every single day at 4 a.m. and he would meditate, and he would get the secrets, and then he would, teach them. Crop rotation, which we don't follow right now, things of that particular nature. So Walter Russell, George Washington Carver were two of my great teachers. And then the other great teacher was Howard Washington Thurman. He was a great Christian theologian mystic. As a matter of fact, I stayed in Thurman Hall. I attended Morehouse College, and I stayed in Thurman Hall, and I met him. And I heard him speak as a freshman. And it penetrated my soul, the silence that oozed from his being touched my soul. And at that time, as a 17-year-old boy, going on 18, I didn't understand what I was feeling. I just knew there was something there, but it wasn't until years later that I actually got what had happened, what that transmission was. But a couple of things, a couple of Thurman stories really impacted me. One, he was on a travel trip to India to meet Gandhi. And a number of it was an exchange trip where the Christians were hanging out with the Hindus and having dialogue. And in the middle of this dialogue, one of the Hindus says to Howard Thurman, I don't have any respect for you. You're the only African American on this particular trip. All the other Christian ministers were white. And he said, and I don't have no respect for you because your religion doesn't even respect you. When you go back to America, you will not be able to worship in a white congregation, or you'll be subjected to sitting in the balcony. He says, I don't have any respect for a man who would be a part of religion that doesn't respect him. And so Dr. Thurman took this criticism and he came home to America and he began to just meditate and pray on what the man had said to him, because it was true at that particular time. He couldn't worship unless it was a black church. And if he did go to a white church, if they allowed it, he'd have to sit in the balcony. And he ended up writing this treatise called Jesus and the Disinherited. And he began to teach the teachings of Jesus and how the teachings of Jesus apply to everyone. White, black, rich, poor, woman, man. And anyway, at the end of this treatise, he writes, I'm no longer necessarily a follower of Christianity. I'm a follower of the teachings of Jesus. So he separated himself from Christianity as it was at that time and followed the teachings of Jesus. And because of that, in many circles, he was labeled a heretic and shunned by the Christian religion. And he ended up starting a church in San Francisco called the Church of All People, which was the first integrated Christian church in America. And subsequently, over the years now, the Christian church is trying to re-embrace him because he was a mystic that transcended Christianity. He loved Emerson, he loved Thoreau, he loved, the great mystics of the ages, and still embraced the teachings of Jesus. So he was a great influence of me because he was able to not only embrace the cosmic awareness of Jesus, but he was able to bring into the darkest moments, into moments in which humanity was walking through, and bring light there without denying tragedy, without denying loss, without denying death, without denying disease that human beings walk through. He was able to bring into those dark moments this great teaching of this great teacher, Jesus, and articulate a way of applying the teachings into real day activities. So it wasn't like he never bypassed the human experience of things we walk through, but he was able to bring these teachings and help people walk through the darkness with the light of great understanding. So all of these three individuals, and there are more, were influencing on me even before I walked into a metaphysical community. It was later on that I walked into a metaphysical community because my mother was attending the Founders Church of Religious Science, the Guidance Church of Religious Science. I wasn't attending anything because, one, I had grown up kind of atheistic myself going through college, and I didn't really think churches were truth tellers. And so I would never go into a church because, they're hooked up with some kind of theology about God being a man in the sky, and one day you're going to die and you go to a place called heaven. I knew that was not truth. And so it wasn't until a period of time later that I actually went into a metaphysical spiritual community, the Guidance Church of Religious Science. And I remember walking into the sanctuary. I was a few minutes late, and so the minister was already speaking. And I remember him saying, heaven and hell are not necessarily places, they're states of consciousness. And I remember saying, he's right. I said it out loud, he's right. And because it was a shock that in a church, truth was being spoken. And I said, what? He's speaking truth? And so I sat down and I listened to him. And that was Dr. Daniel L. Morgan. And he became a great teacher. He gave language to the inner experiences that I was having. Because at that particular time, as I said, most of my best friends were on the other side. I was having encounters with these individuals, but they had passed on. And so Dr. Daniel L. Morgan, who was a great metaphysician, gave me language to what was occurring in my awareness. And then I met a man by the name of Dr. Homer Johnson, who was a great mystical man that became one of the greatest spiritual practitioners, and then ultimately a great minister in the New Thought ethic. And that really impacted my consciousness, because he was alive, in the body. He validated many of the things that were happening inside of my awareness. Because if we go before I had my first spiritual awakening as an adult, I was a part of a group that wanted to change America by any means necessary. And I was in one of these meetings, and a voice behind me said, if you were to take over the world tomorrow, would the world be any different? And I turned around, there was nobody there. And so I went on I was in the meeting, and then the voice said it again, but this time it was coming from within me. It said, if you were to take over the world tomorrow, would the world be any different? And I looked around the room, and I could see the pathology of all the beings in the room. This one guy was very territorial. This one guy had a big ego. He always had to be right. This one person was very possessive. I mean, I could just see that if we were to take over the world, it wouldn't be any different. So I left that meeting, and the next week, somebody in that meeting shot somebody. They got into an argument. A guy pulled out a gun and shot somebody. Fortunately, I wasn't there to be a part of that whole legal debacle. And then I just left Atlanta, Georgia, and I enrolled in USC, psychobiology major. I was on my way. I was going to go to med school. And then these series of inner experiences continued until it culminated with this awakening that I had, in which I could see that we were surrounded by this presence of love and beauty. And then subsequently, Walter Russell came into my life. Subsequently, George Washington Carver, Sri Aurobindo out of India came into my life. He was very influential in my thinking and in my articulation. I even went to India. I went to Oroville in India. Sri Aurobindo was a cohort of Gandhi. They were seeking to free themselves from the shackles and the oppression of Great Britain. And when Sri Aurobindo was jailed with Gandhi, many times, one of the times in which he was jailed, he went into full-blown cosmic consciousness. And when he came out, he told Gandhi that, he was still with him, but that he was being called into another way of freeing humanity, and that was through spiritual teachings. So those particular beings were very influential with me, and then the living beings as Dr. Daniel L. Morgan, Homer Johnson, Buckminster Fuller, all impacted my consciousness in very, very powerful ways. Yeah.
Unmute myself. Isn't it fun getting to know Reverend Michael that way? Kind of his history, his journey. I see people nodding their heads, which is good. And I'm going to bring on Jonathan. I'll also bring on Omashar for a moment too. Love to get kind of like what has stood out for you so far and what you've heard from Michael.
Well, I'll say first that just the amount of people that he had a list that he was like honoring. We tend to become, studies show we become a lot like the 5 people we most hang out with. Right. So when I read that many years ago, I said, well, shoot, I want to hang out with the Dalai Lama and, Deepak Chopra and any other spiritual teacher I can. So that's how I started getting to interviewing all these folks. And just through books, you can hang out with people. So that struck me. And then also, I liked how he realized that heaven and hell were states of consciousness. I have a 1-minute story about that, which has always impacted me. This guy goes up to a guru, and in a voice accustomed to instant obedience, he says, "Well, if you're so wise, teach me a lesson about heaven and hell." And the guru looks at him and says, "Teach you about heaven and hell? I couldn't teach you anything. You're ugly. You're disgusting. You smell bad. You don't have a caring bone in your entire body. You lie to yourself constantly. Just get out of my sight and stop wasting my time." Well, this arrogant man gets red in the face and he shakes with rage. He gets ready to punch the guru in the face. A moment before he throws the punch, the guru says, "That's hell." The man realized that this guru risked getting beaten up to teach him this lesson about hell. He unclenches his fists and he bows deeply in gratitude to the guru. And the guru says, "And that's heaven."
Mm.
And we create our own heaven and hell by how we interpret the events in our life. And things are always up to interpretation. A friend of mine the other day told me that I asked her, how was it getting cancer 3 years ago? And she's had like 5 surgeries. And her answer surprised me. She said, "Best thing that ever happened to me." Well, that sounds kind of tough, but, and then she said, I said, "Well, how'd that compare to when you got married 10 years ago, and you were all happy?" She said, "Well, it ends up that day was the worst thing that ever happened to me." So,
Yeah. Key word there is interpretation.
yeah,
We have very little control over what happens to us, but we have total control of how we interpret it. There's a wonderful saying that 90% of life is what happens to us. 10% of life is what happens to us. 90% of life is how we manage it, how we interpret it. And absolutely, by being grateful. And that's one of the things I love about you, Jonathan. You're a very grateful guy. And gratitude definitely leads to happiness. People that complain a lot, God, life gives them more to complain about, right? And those of us that are grateful, life gives us lots to be grateful for. And I'm grateful for you. I know that you and your beloved are going to be going off into the hills to celebrate your birthday. So definitely give my love to Kirsten. And one more time, I just want to remind people that you can learn much more about Jonathan Robinson by going to his website, findinghappiness.com, and get some of his books. Get The Technology of Joy, Find Happiness Now, Communication Miracles for Couples, Life's Big Questions, The Experience of God. I mean, he covers it all. And so you really do. 14 books, and you've reached millions and millions.
And we're going to get your book out one of these days, Scott.
Maybe next year.
Okay.
I honestly have often known that my last job, if you will, my last major thing I do in life is actually writing books. And there are 5 or 6 books that I imagine that hopefully I'll get written if I live long enough. But right now I'm pretty focused on Global Peace Tribe and Love Coach Academy. That's got me pretty busy. But the books will come. Thank you for being with us on your birthday. Love to Kirsten. Have a great time on your journey, and say hello to Marianne for me tomorrow.
I will.
Take care, Jonathan Robinson.
Okay. Goodbye.
All right. George Noble writes, Reverend Michael was also pals with Dr. Gabriel Cousins. He's been on our show many times, but may not have been the one who initiated him into living foods and fasting. Yeah, I don't know. But I do want to go back to the second part of what Reverend Michael has to say, because there's still some amazing stories ahead. So let's go back and listen to the final part of what he had to say here. And I hope you're enjoying the show. We will be hearing also from Temple Hayes, and you'll really enjoy what she has to say as well. How come I'm not finding it now? Maybe I just go to share screen. Maybe it's already there. Give me a second, you guys. For some reason, it isn't showing up. I know it's here because I was playing it. Give me a sec. While we are finding what happened to Reverend Michael, where are you, Reverend Michael? Son of God, it just disappeared. This is a strange, strange thing. Omashar, I am going to need for you to, if you don't mind, cover, because I'm going to have to reopen the Reverend Michael video.
I don't mind at all. And I love Reverend Michael. What a presence. Just being in his presence, even through Zoom, I just feel expanded and enlightened. And he's so eloquent. And I met him many moons ago at Agape. And a nice story about him was that at Agape, I met a gentleman called Antion, who is a Sikh, but he used to be a gentleman. He used to be called Victor Briggs, and he was in a band. Eric Burden and the Animals was his claim to fame. But anyway, the long story short is he was leaving his position as musical director of Unity in Hawaii, Unity Church, and he said, "Omashar, do you want this?" And I said, "Yes, I do, because if I move to Hawaii, I'm going to be so laid back I'll fall over, and this will give me a focus." And so I went to Hawaii, and for 9 years I was the music director for Unity of Kauai. So I'm going to play a little song now, and it's called "What More Can I Be Than What I Am?" And here we go. So you can move and groove, Eleanor. What more can I be than what I am? Though it's taken some time to clear these clouds from my eyes. So open your heart and dance along. I'm thinking it time to stop that same old song. I've come alive, so hear me now. I am in love with the world around me, and I will hold her in my arms and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da, and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da, and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da. So don't try to hold me to what I was. I've traveled through time to see this day arise. The love that I am is here for you. So open the door and let the sun shine in. I've come alive, so hear me now. I am in love with the world around me, and I will hold her in my arms and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da, and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da, and her with my dreaming. La 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 la. Ba da 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 ba da da. Ba da 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 ba da da da. So open the door and let the sun shine in. I've come alive, so hear me now. I am in love with the world around me, and I will hold her in my arms and lift her with my dreaming. La da da da. I lift her with my dreaming. Lift her with my dreaming. La da da da. What more can I be than what I am?
Beautiful. Thank you, Eleanor, Joy, and Jeffrey for leading the dance party. And thank you, beloved brother Omashar, for jumping in there.
Well, it was the right time, and what more can we be than what we truly are inside? And as Michelangelo says, just to strip off that which is not. You know, we're already awakened inside. I know that. And it's only the buildup of the mental effluvia and dross which keeps us away from that, and to constantly sound off of Michael and all of these beautiful beings is just a great reflection to where the stone is still not revealed, the statue. And interesting, after the show last night, I watched Deepak Chopra with some gentleman. Anyway, long story short, he was saying about the Buddha's last words. It was amazing. Deepak was saying that as he was getting ready to pass, the people around him were saying, "Are you a master? Are you a teacher? Are you a guru? Are you a mystic?" And the last words of the Buddha, according to Deepak Chopra, were, "I am awake." That was it. I am awake. Wow. And there's an amazing interview with Deepak. He was interviewing people, interviewing a gentleman who was very studied about mushrooms, and it was a link that someone put into the link.
Yeah, Jeffrey Colebrook put that link in.
Yes.
Jeffrey, who we just watched dancing, was
right.
who put that link into the chat box yesterday. So
it was phenomenal.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a question from Melissa wanting to know what was the name of the song you just played.
It's called "What More Can I Be." What More Can I Be? And it was a very, it's on my Illuminate album, Bandcamp. And it came out of frustration because I actually spent time in where Sri Aurobindo lives. We spent a week in a group there visiting his ashram and the whole thing. And during the trip that I was on there, previous to that, I'd arrived in India and I'd traveled for 2.5 days to get there. I was absolutely mindless. And the person who brought me there said, "I want you here now to come and do this, that, and the other." And she'd been there for like a week. And so I was drained and she was chilled. And I got really frustrated. And I went back to my room and I wrote this song. I think I wrote it in Rajasthan. Next to the temple, the big lake there. And I just said, "What more can I be than what I am?" And that was it. This came out of that. So there we are.
Beautiful. Perfect song.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank
Jaipur.
you so much.
It was Jaipur, yeah.
That was perfect. And again, reminder everybody that Omashar will be live with us, along with a lot of the people that are here. I see that our wild abbot of the Mystic Monastery, Jerry Anderson's in the room right now. I'm going to bring you on for a second. And we're going to all be together in Sedona, Arizona next weekend. Yes. And everybody, please do join us. It's going to be really an amazing time. There's still time. You can still join us. We can still work it out. over the last weekend, we've had a couple of people at the last one say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm coming. And I do, of course, we're going to honor all of the people that can't make it. And so we are going to live stream as many of the play shops and as many of the events as we possibly can. If you have registered for this season of the Awakening World, you will be able to access 4 days of live stream coming from Sedona. We'll give you a special code and you can get the details at Global Peace Tribe. But hopefully you'll join us in Sedona. If not, of course, we will see you live online. And Jerry is going to take us to a secret cave. He lived in Sedona for quite a while, and he knows about the secret cave there. And we're going to, on Monday afternoon, Monday the 24th, we're going to all go on a journey to this incredible secret place and have a magical experience, a mystical experience with the abbot of the Mystic Monastery, who's coming all the way to Sedona just to take us to this cave. And he'll be with us all 4 days, of course. So Sherry, really looking forward to being with you in person, and Omashar as well. And it's going to be pretty special. And again, because I'm an inclusive kind of guy, I do want to make sure that everybody is still going to be able to join us through the live stream. Not on the cave, though. You won't be able to make it. We'll take photos. We'll take photos. All right. When I was a teenager, my life changed when I went to see the band Yes. And the story is I went to a Black Sabbath concert. I'm about 15 years old, and I go to see Black Sabbath with my buddies at the Hollywood Bowl. And the band that came on before them was a band that we'd never heard of called Yes. We were so blown away by the amazing musical artistry of Yes that we didn't even stay for the Black Sabbath concert. We left, went to Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard and bought Yes albums. And that began my love affair with the band Yes. I later went on to meet John Anderson, spent time with him in his home. John's the lead singer of Yes. Why am I telling you all of this? Because Yes had an album that came out shortly after that experience. The experience I had where I first met them, I think was in 71 or 72. In 1974, they recorded an album called Tales from Topographic Oceans that was inspired by Autobiography of a Yogi. And that introduced me to this beautiful, beautiful man, Paramahansa Yogananda. And I noticed that many people in the chat box have already mentioned Yogananda as a master teacher for them. He's a very, very beautiful being. I've had lucid dream experiences where he's come and supported me in times of challenge for me. And he's just a very, very beautiful soul. And it's interesting how many people that I've had a soul connection with. And then as we get talking, we both discover that Yogananda is a guide, is an influence for us. Well, I had that experience with Temple Hayes. She was on my show. I actually gave a sermon at her church when she was the minister of the Unity Church in St. Petersburg. About 10 years ago, I gave a pair of sermons there, met her then. And then she was on our show recently. And when we were talking, it came out that we both were lovers of Yogananda, and she is very involved in a new musical all about Yogananda, which is going to premiere on November 17th in Los Angeles at the Biltmore Hotel, which is where he died, where he had his Mahasamadhi. And so that is what inspired the idea for today's show. And so for any of you who don't know about Temple Hayes, she is a real difference maker. She's a global spiritual leader, shamanic energy healer, radio host, author, and she has traveled all over the world. And she's amazing. And so this next segment is a pre-recorded with her. She's at the Unity Church in Santa Barbara right now, which I saw Susan goes to. So we did a pre-record, and we'll also be talking a lot about our love of Yogananda. Oh, hold on. Jeffrey is holding something up to the camera. Let's see what that is. Come Together Over Me, A Conversation with John Lennon. Okay, got it. By Conversations with Ernest Holmes, which Temple Hayes is very involved with. In fact, Jeffrey, you're going to hear her talk about Ernest Holmes in just a minute. So perfect timing. Thank you for that. She's all connected in wonderful and beautiful ways. So let's meet Temple Hayes and hear what she has to say. And you'll really enjoy this. It's really, really, really cool stuff. So I'm going to pull her up. Here we go. Hey, everybody. I am here with Temple Hayes, who I've known for quite a while, but we discovered a common love, and that's Paramahansa Yogananda. And she is involved in an incredible new musical play all about Yogananda. We're going to learn all about that. But Temple, let's just start with your connection. And of course, most people have read the book. This is really one of the most important books of our culture, of our kind of new thought culture. What was your first introduction or your connection to our beloved Yogananda?
You know, it's so cool that you said that, because of being in the play, being the narrator of the musical, which is just such a great calling for me. I contacted a friend of mine that I met when I was 19 years old, and he had traveled all over the world. He was really into yoga, and I was delayed going to college, and in that delay, I had a slight surgery, and in that delay, I went to work for Michelin Tire. So I was with people from all over the world. And this man named Donald Bliss. So there you go, B-L-I-S-S. Okay, that's a sign. And he came up to me and he said, I can see the spirit in you, and etc. And then he said, I want to bring you some books. So he brought me the book, As a Man Thinketh, Illusions, an Autobiography of a Yogi. So yes, like so many people, and many of you listening, watching, is that it was a breakthrough. It was something as a soul that we all felt, our reincarnated knowing, but yet in our traditions and our cultures around us, or societal beliefs, it was a whole different thing about this relationship we call God. We had to go through an intermediary or something, or be saved before we had access or whatever. And here's Yogananda going, just be it, you know? So that was my first experience. And I feel such gratitude that I'm able to be with him in this way.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do a whole nother show about Richard Bach and illusions.
Oh,
I was born on Christmas Day. I grew up with a Messiah complex. And thank God I read that book when I was around 18 years old. And it really helped me sort out my own Messiah complex stuff. And years later, I had the good fortune to meet Richard Bach. And he was a delightful man. You know, that there's that phrase, never meet the author. And I was nervous because I was interviewing him for my television show. And he couldn't have been more wonderful. And I was like, okay, thank God, Richard Bach is wonderful. But that's another show we'll have to do sometime.
Oh, I really want to do that with you. I love that book. Yes, it just, and it's timeless. Mm-hmm. And Autobiography of Yogi is timeless. Absolutely. You know, it really is. When I think of the courage of Yogananda, I mean, he was, you know, born knowing that he had the purpose, that he was here to be a guru, which is so common in India. Children that are gifted are so fortunate. You know, where America, it's like, let's get you in, get you on your SAT score. You got to make good grades. You got to memorize an old paradigm so you can be smart, right? But no really life schools. And so for Yogananda, you know, when he told his family, they knew he was gifted, he knew he was gifted, and he was starting universities and mystery schools when he was 17 years old, right? So when Babaji the avatar, the Indian avatar, likened to Jesus, you know, said, you got to go to America. They have lots of issues. You know, they need you. I mean, he was young and just, you know, came on a boat. And I mean, think of that. You know, it would be likened to today of having a Martian say, come to Mars. We don't kill each other in Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. And my understanding is I believe, if I recall correctly, he came over in around 1918, and he actually met with Calvin Coolidge, the president of the United States. And because it was a really big deal that this East Indian spiritual leader was coming to this country. And he was just, I think, had that kind of quality where he was just loved by everybody who met him. He had that ability to just immediately create grace and trust and safety, even though in 1920s, you know, he was a very different looking character than most
the
Americans.
turban. I mean, he stood out everywhere. He already stood out just with his aura, but then you add the clothing, the color of the skin back then, and the turban, and then you have, you know, everything all together. But it's to my understanding that when he really felt home was when he came to California.
Yeah.
And he became such a hit here, and then established his home at Mount Washington.
Right.
And, yeah. Well, in so many ways, and I realized this on the last show with you, you know so much about him. You know, it's really wonderful. As we move forward and do other things, I think it would be great to have you more involved with what you know, because you know a lot about him.
Well, he, you know, honestly, he's been my master teacher. And I've had some really beautiful experiences of him. And I've also noticed that many of the people that turned out to be the most important people in my life were also people that were very connected to Yogananda. So I like to believe that he's up there, you know, whispering into our ear, call Temple Hayes, connect with this person, connect with that person. You know, and well, I'll share one quick story. I'm not someone who gets depressed very often. I'm very blessed to have a good life. But about 30 years ago, I had just a number of things happen, and I was at a really hard time in my life. And I hit a really deep depression temple. It was one of those depressions where I just wanted to sleep all day. I didn't even want to get out of bed, deal with life. And one afternoon, I dropped to my knees and I prayed specifically to Yogananda, and I begged him, please come lift this depression. And then I crawled into my bed and I fell asleep. It was in the afternoon. And while I was asleep, I dreamt about him. It was a lucid dream. I don't remember the details of the dream. When I woke up, it was gone. The depression was lifted, and my room smelled completely of roses, which of course is his scent. And at the time, I had a roommate named Howie Wallfish, and Howie was not spiritual. He was, you know, not that kind of guy. He was Howie Wallfish from the Bronx, right? So I bring Howie into my room and said, how do you smell? And he goes, yeah, it smells like a bunch of roses. Where's all the roses? My God, I've smelled so many roses all my life. It's like, thank you, Howie. So if Howie Wallfish smelled the roses, I knew that it was real, you know.
Yes,
and,
yes, of course.
you know,
And
so that
you
really
were telling me, sorry, it's the Zoom link thing, but when you're the one that told me that after he died, his body didn't change for 3 weeks, and that just blew me away, and that his body smelled like roses.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So now how about you, as you've been, you know, I guess now's a good time to tell us a little bit about this musical that you're involved with. And here it is. It's going to be having this big premiere on November 17th, so it's coming right up. I'm going to be there. Tell me about the musical and tell me about your role in this.
Well, the Biltmore Millennium on Grand Ave in downtown Los Angeles is the place that Yogananda did his last speech to the ambassador of India and took his last breath right there at the fountain when you walk into the entranceway. So we are bringing Yogananda now 70 years later back into the place that he took his grand travel, right? And so Michel Pascal is an amazing a playwright, writes musicals. He's a great musician. He's linked with like Paul Pesco of Hall & Oates and Madonna. He's linked with Myron McKinley, the music director of Earth, Wind and Fire, Stacey Lamont, the drummer for Michael Jackson. I mean, he hangs out with these guys. And, you know, one of the ways that Michel has done so much good in the world is that at Amity Prison, he's taught meditation there, Scott, for, I want to say 7 years. I've actually had the pleasure of speaking there. And the parolees have a like less than 2 or 3% retention rate when they exit, because they learn, again, just like Yogananda, they learn life skills and they're able to integrate back in society. So Michel is a very humble, full of spirit, not himself, just like people like you and me. These are the kind of people in the fifth dimension that we prefer to hang out with. But he had written a play in 2014 of Saint Teresa, and it did very well in Europe, etc. So he wrote a song about Yogananda, and one thing led to another, and it was just like, oh, I need to do a musical play about this. And so when he did, and he felt the energy, like you were saying, the vibration of Yogananda coming through him and the script, he went, I need Temple Hayes to be the narrator of this, because I've spoken as he's performed at Carnegie Hall twice with him. So we just have a real, you know, deep spiritual relationship. And so it's narration and original music. And I love it too, because it has some hip hop and it has some, you know, move and groove in it. And so my excitement too is the exposure for different generations, you know, that will dance to the vibe of, in just, I think 3 weeks, 24,000 people had viewed the YouTube of one song. So that's pretty, you know, pretty cool. But in a deeper way of what you said, see, that's how I live too. Being a shamanic healer, I believe in archetypal healings. I call forth Saint Germain, Sai Baba, you know, into my awareness, and Raphael and Gabrielle and Michael and these energies and vibes all the time. I don't know about you. I take all the tools in my toolbox. And so when I was invited to do this, I said, it's so time. It's like, Yogananda, how did I leave you at the curb? So now I go, thank you for calling me into your life, because your teachings are so embedded in my heart through, you know, at 19 years old, so a while ago. And so now it's like, and hello, Yogananda, and speak to me and through me. So I don't think that's weird at all. I think what you're talking about is the natural way of living, really.
Beautiful.
You
And
know?
two of the people who've been on my show many times are going to be there with you, Michael Beckwith and Sister Jenna.
Yes, of course. Of course they're with you on your shows. Yep. Bright, bright light. So Michael is going to be opening up with an opening prayer and doing we call it do the Michael. You know, I mean, can you imagine the electricity? And then Dr. Sister Jenna, that I adore, she's currently in India right now. She will be doing the closing.
And of course,
we have lots of surprises.
And of course, I'm doing this pre-record with you, but our audience just saw 5 days from now, but
right.
Michael Beckwith talking about his spiritual teachers and his spiritual influences. And so kind of a nice connection there. And then Sister Jenna is going to be on our show in a couple of weeks, because I'm working with you, the Illuminate Film Festival, and she's a big movie with that, and I'm moderating the panel, but she's going to be on. So it's lovely. That's kind of how we all
I just love
get to rotate around each other and just lift each other up and continue to inspire each other during these incredible times to be alive. Incredible time.
Exactly. And saying yes, I mean, that's such a big thing when we're led by spirit, regardless of title or resume. It's like, okay, what's the next calling? I mean, I look at what you've done with Global Peace Tribe. I didn't tell you this the other night when I had the good pleasure of being on your show. My 501c3 is Global Peace Workers.
No way.
It is.
Oh my God, I love that.
I know. So, we do things like I'm working on a project now of getting some goats and chickens to this small little area of Kenya. But that being said, so we just keep finding each other, and when you're called, I mean, the funny thing with me, not to impress anybody, but just to impress upon, just be willing to say yes, because the joke about me and anybody that's ever worked with me is don't give her a script because she won't follow it, because I'm more extemporaneous and I just go into this space and, and so I'm learning this verbatim, this script. And because it's like, it's a yes, because in any way that we can continue to bring the spiritual resurrection and revolution to this planet, why would we not say yes?
Wow.
So
now, inevitably, when we have something as big as doing what you're doing with this musical, there's personal lessons that correspond with our life. And I'm just curious, is there anything that is going on in your life, in your world right now, that either connecting to Yogananda or learning about Yogananda or learning the script, you're going, oh my gosh, this is exactly in alignment with this particular lesson of my life right now?
Mm-hmm. You are truly one of the most in tune interviewers. You are so pleasant. I love your style because you're only listening to the heart. And I just want to honor that about you. And I'm not sucking up because I'm already on your show. So two things. One is when I went to the last rehearsal, I got so emotional because when I was a little girl, I got a calling too. I knew I was special too. Now, I'm not saying I'm comparative to Yogananda. I'm not into you're this way and you're better and I'm that. I'm just simply saying that I had this deep call of knowing that I had a purpose and that I was here on this earth to make a big difference. And I could see beyond the natural. I could read through the lack of truth, and I was tagged crazy and weird. And it wasn't always pleasant for Yogananda.
Yeah.
Here in the States, he went through a lot of chaos and stuff, and it really hurt him. So it brought up for me and has about what it was like to be different and what it would have been like if I could have told my family I'm as out there as they get in this Southern Baptist community, and they would go, oh honey, you're so different and you're gay and you're all these things, and let's just send you to a mystery school. You must be the reincarnation of somebody that has a purpose. No. I got taken and carted to the mental health clinic, let me tell you. So a whole story that you and I could do about that. And I have to say, sadly, I lied my way out because I was afraid they were going to give me those shock treatments and fry my brain. So I relate to it that way. I think the deeper passion for me that I relate to is that I have at when she wasn't quite 2. I say found me, I mean out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. She found me at my community. You've been to First Unity. It's crowded. She found me, and every Sunday she would find me, and she would grab my leg and she would hold on and be very emotional and cry. And her grandmother, who's her mother, adopted her, and she goes, I don't know what to tell you. And I said, well, it's really okay. So we go on to talk more. This little girl then language. And when she would see me in the hall, she'd go, purple, purple. And she wouldn't want to go. And every time they would go to leave, kicking and screaming and stuff like that. And I went, this is an old soul relationship.
Yeah.
So this child is like, represents to me all the children that are born that are mystical and magical. And so we throw them in systems like Yogananda stood for. We throw them in systems. We develop their SAT. And that's supposed to mean something. I don't know about you. I've been interviewed. I've spoken to people in Hong Kong and all over the world. Nobody's ever asked me what my SAT score was. Ever. Nobody ever. You know, when I got married my wife, she didn't ask me, well, we can't do this until we know what your SAT score is. You know, so it's a huge passion of mine.
Wow.
A huge passion. And it's stirring all that up in ways of where will this land and how will this integrate within me. One school that was a creative school said that they couldn't keep welcoming Miracle, that's her name, my little girl, because she was too much. And now I'm going to write them and say, remember the little girl you said was too much. She's almost 7 and she does everything on 4th grade level. They don't even know where to put her.
Wow. Wow.
So there comes a responsibility with those kind of things, and Yogananda taught us well.
Boy, there's so much I just learned about you, and I just really want to take a breath into the part that you were raised Southern Baptist, and to emerge from that culture as a successful minister of a very large congregation and a world-class speaker, and having a wife and being so esteemed. What a journey your life has been.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
What a journey. Yes,
That's
what
incredible.
a journey.
Yeah.
I've come a long way from a 13-and-a-half-year-old that her grandmother told her she wouldn't see her in heaven, that I was bound to hell, or an aunt
Oh
saying I
my
was
God.
doing the work of Satan. And
Oh,
yeah,
wow. Wow. It's a temple. And that terrifying to be put in a mental institution
Mm-hmm.
because you're the magical person that you are. And of course, what that brings up to me is, God, how many people, how many souls over the years in less evolved cultures were put into insane asylums because they were autistic, or they had the gift of sight, or they could see multidimensional beings, whatever it might be.
Exactly. And it's going on now, I'm sure, all over. And then we look at a person that becomes the addict, you know, that isn't recognized. So there's the hole. And then filling the hole, as John Bradshaw would talk about, with the family system of filling that hole. I mean, when I speak at alcoholic or sobriety kind of conventions, I go, welcome to the Gifted Club. And they go, what? Nobody's ever called me gifted. They call me flawed or trouble, or it's my personality that I ought to know better. And I go, welcome to the Gifted Club, because you've just not found the proper way to focus your gifts. But you know, you drowned that out. Your sacred saboteur was overriding the really essence of who you are. So yeah, we have much to talk about.
We do. You know, I would love to do a show with you and my friend TJ Woodward, who
Oh
also
yeah,
works closely with
love him.
Michael. Yeah, TJ's great. He's been on the show, of course, a few times. And so hearing your approach reminds me of TJ's, which is just really acknowledging that somebody's not broken or flawed because they've developed an addiction. As TJ points out, it started as a good idea.
Yeah, it started as a real good idea. Or in my case, it started out, you know, refusing to listen to myself, because listening to myself had gotten me into so much trouble. I didn't learn intuition from a class, nor does anyone. We're innately intuitive, but depending on the culture and the practice, you know. And so because all the choices I had made had put me in such a state with my family, I had kind of shut my, you know, intuition off. But the first time I drank, I became violently ill. And I went on to do it for 15 years, kill me. And now I call that, it was a slow suicide.
Yeah.
But I'm one of the fortunate that my card wasn't pulled, or it wasn't my time, or who knows?
Thank goodness
Who knows?
you've
But,
led an amazing life.
and
And
well,
I want to
thank you.
acknowledge 35 years sober. 35
Yes,
years.
35 years, yes.
Unmute. You need to unmute, Scott.
I just gave the winning lottery numbers, but now I don't remember them. Doggone it.
I think they were 666 777.
Well, there is actually more from Temple. There's more from Reverend Michael, but all of a sudden I realized we're past 11:30. So I'm going to wrap us up. And as always, we love to conclude with music from Omashar. But before we do that, since we were talking about the Yogananda musical, I've bought my tickets. I'm going to be there. I think I'm going to hang out with Temple and some of the people afterwards. And I will put into the chat box, but for anybody watching on Facebook, you go to concerts.cafe products, and then you'll just see the spiritual musical ticket. But go to concerts.cafe. That's actually where you'll find it, concerts.cafe. Yogananda Dance, a musical to celebrate Yogananda. Reverend Michael Beckwith is going to be there. It's narrated by Temple. It's a brand new musical world premiere happening at the hotel where he had his Mahasamadhi. It's pretty incredible. So meet me there. If you're coming, let me know. We'll have dinner beforehand or connect for tea afterwards. Any final thoughts from what Temple had to say, Omashar?
Just what a beautiful presence. I truly love people who have a way of just speaking directly from their heart and from their spirit with no filters. And what a beautiful life. What an inspiration. And
imagine being told you're going to go to hell. And
well, right. I had similar, my grandparents spoke in similar ways to me. And it's taken me years to pull that off.
Wow.
For instance, when I was young, I am young, I'm 28. When I was about 9, my father left my family, went off with another woman, and that kind of devastated everything. And my grandmother, who was of a certain era, she basically said to me, if you ever see your father, you spit in his face and call him a rat. And it's like, yeah, what amazing things. This is all fertile soil. It's not a negative thing. It's just the way that it was then. And but this is the fertile ground we grow in. And so to hear Temple Hayes speak in that way, it just means, okay, my life is making sense now. Thank you for that clarity. Yeah.
Beautiful. Jerry Anderson, our Mystic Wild Abbot, wrote, one of our monks, I asked how he learned to be wise and respectful, raised in a dysfunctional, drug-addicted home. And he said he didn't study the people. Oh, I'm sorry. He said that he studied the people he didn't want to be like.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like we go, oh, I'm not going to do that, right? So thank you for that, Jerry. All right. What do you have for us today?
Just my closing song I played in the middle, so we'll go for Namaste now. This is it's Sacred Sunday, and I just popped it in the chat. Sing along, keep yourself muted, and well, you don't have to actually, but it'll be a bit cacophonous if we do that.
Keep yourself muted, but still sing along, and maybe Eleanor and Jeffrey will do a little dancing for us.
Yeah, no, it's
anybody else. If I see you dancing, I'll put the spotlight on you. Oh, go ahead.
It's more of a flow. There's no rhythm behind this one except the rhythm of our hearts. So
we can still, yeah.
Namaste, namaste, my heart singing, namaste. The love in me beholds the love in you, namaste, namaste. Namaste, namaste, my heart singing, namaste. The love in me beholds the love in you, namaste, namaste. Namaste, namaste, my heart singing, namaste. The love in me beholds the love in you, namaste, namaste. Okay, last time, see you in Sedona. Namaste, namaste, my heart singing, namaste. The love in me beholds the love in you, namaste, namaste, namaste.
Beautiful. That's awesome.
Namaste, everybody.
Thank you so much. God's blessings. Thank you, Omashar. Looking forward to seeing some of you live in Sedona next weekend, and the rest of you, of course, on the live stream. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
Yes.
And God's blessings. Much, much love to each and every one of you. Namaste. Namaste.
All right.